Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Bernard, are there any circumstances in which you would consider not voting Conservative?
Well, you know, in your darkest moments, that's the sort of thought that crosses your mind, and you wonder sometimes whether you're in the right party. I'm sure everybody's had that thought.
Have you had those thoughts?
But not recently. I think I was born into the Conservative Party. My father was a Conservative politician. My wife's a Conservative politician. Her grandfather and her grandmother were Conservative politicians.
I think you've justified a long thread there.
I kind of think I'm going to die as a Conservative, almost whatever happens.
Well, let's not talk about that prematurely. Now, let's have a look at what the Tory MP, Johnny Mercer, actually said in his interview with the House magazine. He said, when you go home from here on a Thursday and go for a run across Dartmoor or whatever, and you're stripped to your core being, I mean, yeah, you realise it's a, and here he uses some colourful language, we'll call it poor show, just for today's programme. There's no doubt about it that my set of values and ethos, I was comfortable that it was aligned with the Conservative Party. I'm not as comfortable that's the case anymore. If the situation was like it is now, I can safely say there would be absolutely no chance that I would try and be a Member of Parliament. And asked if he would vote for the Conservatives, he said, I wouldn't go and vote. Let's talk to Seb Whale, who did that interview with Johnny Mercer. What's he so cross about, Seb?
I think he's very cross about the direction of travel of the party under Theresa May, which he sees is fundamentally different to the party that he joined under David Cameron and George Osborne. And I think he's finally reaching the end of his tether and he's come out swinging because if he doesn't, then he might be forced to make a decision he doesn't want to make.
Now, we've been trying to get hold of Johnny Mercer, as no doubt has everybody. We've had no luck so far. Has he gone to ground?
I think he might be hunkering down a little bit, yes. I think he's articulated what he needed to articulate and now he's going to withdraw and let it sink in. But, you know, I think sometimes with politicians, they say things that they perhaps regret. I think Johnny knew what he was saying, and he said it with, you know, authority, and he'd obviously been thinking about it for a long time. Yes,
I mean, he also says in that interview that he'd love to be Defence Secretary. I mean, is it a sort of contradictory position that he's holding here? Well,
I think he is ultimately, he is committed to the cause, but he thinks that the party has moved away from what he believes in. So he does want to serve. He's sort of chomping at the bit. He's like a 5'10" bundle of energy that's just ready to explode. He doesn't feel like he's been utilised. So I think he's ready to serve, but only if it's the right government. And he told me he wouldn't serve in this administration.
Seb, thank you very much. Sarah, do you have some sympathy for Johnny Mercer and how he's feeling?
I suspect that Johnny Mercer is probably in the hands of the whips as we speak, which is probably why he's gone
What's
to
being
ground.
done to him, do you think, of this?
Well, I hope nothing too awful. I think that Johnny was elected when wasn't it, 2015? No, was it 2015?
It might have been 2015.
And I think that there's a process that happens to people who become elected as MPs, which is they go in, they get elected, they think they're going to complete, everything's going to change, they're going to change the world, and then they go through, they get to this stage where they realise that it's not as easy as it looks, and it's all very complicated, and there is a sort of sense of disillusionment, and I think he's just been caught at the moment where he's perhaps feeling that. And I think, you know, it's normal to when you're quite a new MP and you're still getting used to the fact that, you know, yes, you've been elected to make a difference, but making the difference is really difficult. But
is it particularly difficult in this situation? With where the government is?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the period in British politics is definitely a very difficult one. I mean, I don't know whether it's any more or less. I mean, I guess that depends on what side you're on and what you think. But he's obviously, you know, having some moments of doubt and pain, and I think that's quite normal. I mean,
but Maya, do you think MPs should show a little bit more loyalty to their parties?
No, I mean, I think particularly at this moment where we have a government that is in somewhat disarray, it's been complete chaos around Brexit, but we also have a domestic agenda that is almost non-existent. So whether you look at stuff like homelessness, rising household debt, if you look at issues like climate change, that the Labour Party actually does have some policies on, we're hearing almost nothing from the government. And I actually think it's not a time where I would agree with the Tory MP that the government looks a mess, but I would also question what party he thought he was joining. This is a party of austerity. It's the party that has seen a rising use of food banks. So I think I agree with him to a degree about the mess of the Conservatives, but also what were your values going into this? What were you expecting?
And would you defend Labour MPs that decide to do the same? Let's have a look at Frank Field, for example.
I mean, I think that MPs can be at odds with their leaders. I think that is going to happen. It doesn't necessarily mean I always agree with why they are.
OK.
So.
I mean, Bernard, Johnny no longer feels comfortable with the ethos and values of the Conservative Party. He doesn't seem to share them. Should he resign?
No. I think he should be doing what he's doing, start a positive conversation about what ethos and values we want to take out of the present situation into the future. I share Maya's concern that a great deal is being neglected because of the difficulty the government is having with Brexit. That's partly because a large number of MPs don't seem to want to accept the referendum result, which they all said they would accept. That's one of the reasons it's... But this is a kind of existential political crisis. I mean, the Brexit result came as such a shock to so many people, and they're so reluctant to accept it. You know, this is just something we have to get through.
Is he in the right party? Is he in the right party?
Oh, yeah, he's in the right party. He's a good guy, and I very much hope he'll continue as an MP. So, also, he does represent something rather refreshing, is that, you know, I was brought up to button your lip and be very careful what you say and be very measured and grown up.
You haven't always practised that, have you?
Well, there's a kind of authenticity that the public is demanding from politicians, and boy, that's it. It's not quite what we want to hear at this particular moment in the Conservative Party, but, you know, I think that kind of freshness is invigorating for politics as a whole.
See, this is what I think is needed. But people, like, as a non-politician, people look at our members of parliament, and the MP's job is to protect the nation, first and foremost. Then their obligation is to the constituents that they represent, and thirdly, to their political parties. And they're
Correct.
making everything about politics. And it's a Conservative Party versus the Labour Party.
It was a Conservative politician that first said that, of course.
Yeah, but it's true. It's in the rules.
Winston Churchill.
As I understand it, it's in your job description.
Serve the nation first, yes.
And the
National
government
interest.
are not doing that today.
The government, of course,
I
keeps
don't
saying
think
it's
so.
serving...
Government are not.
What's that?
Members of
Are they not
Parliament
serving
are
the
not.
national
No,
interest?
I
they're
think the Prime Minister is absolutely doing her best to serve the national interest. I don't necessarily agree
By
with
progressing
some of her
with something
judgments.
that's going to be a complete catastrophe.
So you don't believe in democracy? You want to overturn the referendum result?
Well, didn't we have a 5-year parliamentary election? We elected a 5-year parliament in 2015. Then 2 years later, after Theresa May said 6-7 times, we're definitely not having another general election until 2020, she had one 2 years later.
We're going to come on, and we're going to come to all of this.
The vast majority of MPs were elected on a Brexit ticket. That was in the Labour manifesto as well as the Conservative
And we'll
manifesto.
return to it, because while we're discussing Johnny Mercer, just take a look at this.
I'm certainly looking forward to testing myself against the Hunters. I hope they give it everything, and I certainly will. What are you looking forward to?
Spending 24/7 with you.
It's a really important bill going through. Obviously, I'm on the run, so therefore I've got to somehow get myself up to London, vote, then get out of there and hook up with Kay again later. I've got a lot of concerns about getting back into London. There's a lot of ANPR, cameras, and it's slightly risky. If I was to get caught on day 2, it would be a personal humiliation.
There speaks the former military man. Well, that was Johnny Mercer on the Channel 4 show Hunted. He is trying to avoid detection or being surveyed with the Sky presenter Kay Burley. He said he was making his way to London to the Commons. In fact, they did catch up with him there and put surveillance around the House of Commons. What did you think of it?
It's quite funny. I don't know what he was doing on that programme for a start.
Yes, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit embarrassing for an MP to be doing this kind of thing, to be honest. He's not a celebrity. That's what it's called, celebrity hunted, right? I think it's a bit embarrassing.
Right, or light relief.
Well, I think actually quite a lot of my colleagues are sort of sneakingly jealous that he's getting all the publicity.
Getting to sit next to Kay Burley.
And it's not
Or
about
maybe
Brexit.
that. Well, look, we were talking about Brexit just a few moments ago, so let's return to that theme. Our Deputy Political Editor, John Pino, we've hunted him down, and he's here. Welcome back to the programme. So we are talking about the febrile nature, as Johnny Mercer sees it, in the Tory party. Is it as febrile as it seems?
Yes, I mean, I don't know how many other MPs would use the exact language of Johnny Mercer, but I think quite a few of them would share the broad sentiment. The Prime Minister leaving Brussels today in her bag a set of politically impossible options. And she's arriving, well, very shortly, back in this country to rejoin a party where a large part of the cabinet, a large part of the parliamentary party, whether they are Remainers, whether they are hardline Brexiteers, whether they are and see themselves as pragmatists, are simply not in the business of buying what's on offer. the business in Brussels is about, is it possible to construct some sort of intricately constructed piece of fudge on several fronts, whether it is to do with the divorce deal or the future relationship. But Parliament now, at least, is not in the fudge-buying business, and Brussels isn't very interested in cooking it up.
Thank you. This Conservative MP's getting attention not for his new book, but for some page-turning quotes in a magazine. Talking about his own government, Johnny Mercer said, "I mean, yeah, you realise it's a four-letter word, show." As for whether he'd vote Tory, he said, "Just being honest, I wouldn't vote. Of course I wouldn't, no."
I absolutely stand by it. I believe in a Conservative Party that shares the values and ethos of a modern Britain, and I have no self-interest in this. It's about the country. I believe the Conservative Party is clearly the party of government, and it's my job to speak out, I think, when I feel that's going awry.